There we go. Okay, we are live December 23rd, 2023. This is Chief Crow. Okay, phones are going to be open right now from the beginning. So 505-510-4226. I put a link to the track below. And open topics, but I have a list of things. These are the IPR points of interest. And as you can see on my site where I list these things, I have the first edition of the Insider ready to go. That's the cover. And 2025 is the year. So we're going to talk about the subway fire, real or fake, Jaron response to critics. The most interesting topic tonight is probably going to be Luigi and the Deadpool connection and the crackhead Dave Chappelle, Joker, and Oswald. They threw a lot out there today. Area 51 caller broadcast on a hacked radio station. So there's this old Art Bell call. I think it was 9/11, 1995 or something, where somebody claimed that they were at Area 51 being chased by aliens, and then they hung up the phone. And that call is rather infamous, and it was broadcast on some station. And then we'll talk about cloud anger, because there is a lot of that. So phones are open if you want to call in. Let's see who's here. Let's go, Green Smoke. I suck. Live streaming for about an hour, and then I played the first part of the John the Bond. Did everybody here listen to part 2? Did anybody miss that? Because I put it on Patreon and I put it on the IPS site, but I could probably put it behind the members paywall on YouTube. I was just wondering if anyone needed that access. I just have to put it into a video format. Dominic says, good evening, Thirst. Yes, this is Christmas Eve. Leo Biddle says, great chat with JLB. You know, it always is. And that was my 5th appearance on the Bonversation. And I think we're getting somewhere with this. You know, and we have an agenda here at the IPS. I mean, there's no secret about it. You know, we're not just... I mean, we are somewhat ivory tower, off-world stage, conscientious objectors. We're on the outside looking in tracks of the auto hoax era. A lot of stuff going on. Let me play this clip. This is interesting. This is someone from Mossad, supposedly. But he says something here that I think might be representative of the PSYOP entertainment complex itself. So let me go ahead and play it for you. And this is from a 60 Minutes episode.
How did you convince Hezbollah to buy this?
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
Being traced back to Israel. Shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to...
Now here's the part where he says, we create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We are the directors.
A pretend world. We are a global production company. We write. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
So just that last part, it sounds like the Newsbenders. We write the screenplay. We're a global production company with the directors, producers, the main actors, and the world is our stage. I emphasize here that the PSYOP entertainment complex is far more relevant than the military-industrial complex. It's really one and the same, but people take things literally and they cannot discern real from fake because they've been trained not to know the difference. Now, I make fun of chemtrail people because at this point it's indefensible. It's an argument from ignorance. It's kind of sad to still be a propaganda mule for such an old recruitment tool for alt media, because that's what it is. But there's a reason why it won't go away. And it won't go away for the same reason that people are still panicking about drones. It's a panic. And they're arguing from a place of ignorance, and ignorance breeds fear. So let me play this clip here, because this is Danica Patrick, a former professional race car driver, and she's at Turning Point USA describing how no matter how fast she drives, she can't outrun the chemtrails, and that the chemtrails are in her food.
I have a lot of luxuries in life, but when I think about the food that gets put on the table, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, I think I can't run from that anymore. I can't, like I think my food, right? Plant a garden. Well, you can't run from the chemtrails in the skies.
You can't run from the chemtrails in the skies. This is Turning Point USA. And I'm convinced now that they are pandering to the ignorant and that the entire premise of chemtrails is to bring in people who fall for two specific logical fallacies: faulty causality and appeal to motive. So they believe there's a they. They believe that there's some ongoing operation. And then at the same time, they're convinced by some pretty sly tricks, a little sleight of mind, where they think that the planes are causing the weather phenomenon, not that the contrails are indicators of climactic conditions 33,000 feet above your head. But again, she says not only are they spraying chemtrails in your garden, but they're putting vaccines in your salad.
Vaccines in food like lettuce and tomatoes.
Lettuce. Are we being cut off here? Someone said the stream's breaking up. I don't know if that's true, but we might be. But again, the trails in the sky are the only tangible evidence you have that the Illuminati's out to get you, that there's a bad group of people conspiring against you. You don't have anything else but rumor. And so that's a tangible thing, and I think that's why it's so powerful. Okay, so it is buffering. Not sure what's causing that. Gremlins, perhaps. I know that when I was on a conversation with John LeBon, my mic or the computer was actually cutting in and out quite a bit. So I'm going to have to upgrade everything very soon. We'll have to make that a priority here, but hopefully it fixes itself. So let's get into... So anyway, that clip that I played, the world's a stage, we're the main actors, producers, directors, a global production company. Just think it's very pertinent to what we talk about every day. It is the news benders, as we describe them here. Here's an interesting clip. This is the shepherd for king. Elon and Trump worship Saturn. They're leading the world into the Antichrist beast system golden age. So I'm going to play a couple of clips here from a longer breakdown of Trump and Musk.
He worships. As we can see, Grok, his artificial intelligence, got a new logo. And for those who do not know, this is clear Saturn symbolism. And go figure, this new logo was released during the festival of Saturnalia, which is a Roman pagan festival. Interesting here is in the Roman mythology.
A feature in Megalopolis. They actually have a Saturnalia festival where Elvis is performing while wrapped in an American flag. And he's singing America the Beautiful, which is the song that was performed at Trump's first inauguration. Really strange. Okay, next. As to the subway fire. So I did look at the subway fire. I woke up this morning and I saw it. Many of you have seen it. And fake until proven real has to be our standard here. And we have to think about what these things mean. Like, what is the meaning of the subway itself? So my basic breakdown is that it seems psyopy. There was a lack of response from anybody. If you walk by somebody set on fire, especially if you're a cop, and someone's burning, you're going to respond. But weirdly, strangely, nobody was responding. There was somebody recording it, and the person who did it, who set the person on fire, was just sitting by and watching. But there was a lack of screams. And the lack of screaming is consistent with somebody using naked burn gel, Zell gel, like Maxwell Zrello, very quiet as he burned to death. Well, that's because there's this stuff called Zell gel. It covers your whole body. They set you on fire. They do this in movies for special effects. It's better than CGI. And they're able to basically pretend to be burning alive, but they have to hold their breath. So they can't scream. So that might be an explanation as to why no one was screaming. Does anybody here care to guess how old the illegal immigrant was? How old was the arson? The arson was 33. And then that doesn't mean anything in and of itself, but how many times have we noted the correspondence between that number and some kind of a hoax code? It's some kind of a indicator that you're looking at a hoax, like Frank James in the subway. And this is pertinent because one of the things I want to point out here is that this PSYOP would perfectly add on to the right-wing narrative about the danger of subways and illegal immigrants. So it's perfectly made for them. What only could have made it better possibly would be been if the immigrant had barbecued a cat on the burning woman, because these are the types of things that they like to hype up. And the subway has been a target of the right for some time. It's symbolic of the lower class. And this is consistent not just in these PSYOP narratives like Jordan Neely, Daniel Penny, which is very recently in the news because of Daniel Penny, but also Frank James, who fired 33 rounds into the subway train, the Prophet of Doom, who was modeled off of the Riddler, and he shot up the subway right after the Batman movie. And in the Batman movie and the Joker movie, in both, the subway is a very symbolic place because it's all about class warfare, and the subway represents the lower class and this potential uprising and the danger they represent to the establishment. This is why the right has consistently said, get out of the subways. This is why they made a hero out of Daniel Penny. And the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely PSYOP is no realer than this Luigi thing. That's why they cross paths. That's why Daniel Penny gets out, he goes free as Luigi goes in. The right-wing vigilante gets out, the left-wing vigilante goes in. These stories happen at the same time for a reason. But the subway is the key element in this fire. Makes me think it might be a PSYOP. So I'm still looking into it, but it's definitely in the realm of fakeable. With, again, Zell gel, the naked burn gel. So let me show you a couple of other things that caught my eye. Here are some recent photos of, here he is, Luigi Mangione, who was cheered and wooed and basically love-bombed by SNL's audience. They love this guy. They're in love with him. They're infatuated. He's probably going to have a bunch of babies. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but the left is in love with this individual. They're tattooing his murder scene on their arms. But look, here he is smiling. And he's also dressed exactly like his attorney. They're actually wearing the same clothes. Here they are smiling together, laughing. And here he is in a car. Big smile on his face. He kind of looks like a young Charles Manson. Like, let me show you this. Let's look at a young Charles Manson. He's smiling, he's laughing, but if you look at the dashboard in front of him, he's got a character from some movie. It's Deadpool. So I'm not familiar with Deadpool very much, other than he's kind of he's not a joker, but he's consistently making jokes. And then for comedic effect, he often breaks the fourth wall. So there's something with Deadpool on his dashboard. And then behind that, there's Saint Dave Chappelle with crack all over his lips. So what do you make of this? Dave Chappelle, his crackhead, the meme, got any more of that, whatever. And then Deadpool. And then smiling Luigi in the back. Now let's go a little further on this. So here he is in his red sweater. You see his collar. And this image has been compared by a lot of people to that of Lee Harvey Oswald. So this is another correlation between the Joker and the shooter, and specifically Lee Harvey Oswald in this shooter. And Oswald has been on the world stage since Robert Crimo shot up the 4th of July parade on 7/4/22 with a 47 tattooed on his head and a photo of Lee Harvey Oswald on his wall. And he used to frequent Trump rallies. So Lee Harvey Oswald has been on the world stage and has been referred to numerous times in conjunction with the number 47. So it's interesting that Luigi shoots the guy outside of the 47-story hotel where Trump gave his acceptance speech. He's arrested at the McDonald's, address 407. We were just noting this theme of shooting the 47th CEO of America and this correlation between him and Oswald. And then, of course, his connections with the character, the Joker, Travis Bickle, and this is all intentional. So here's Luigi with his lawyer, who, I believe his lawyer, isn't she married to the attorney representing Diddy? There's some kind of close connection here. Luigi Mangione and his lawyer, Karen Agnifilo, show up in New York wearing matching outfits. There you go. Matching outfits. All right, let's continue here. It's cutting in and out. Okay. Hopefully it's fixed itself. I don't know. What's up? Thank you, Mixlix. T-Dog135. P. Trippa. Yes, we are live. Black that kneecap. Lord Laney. Ted Stryker. Truth Hurts. Says, interesting timing of Biden commuting sentences of death row inmates. Okay, Leo says, Deadpool is an anti-hero. Okay, so anti-hero would fit, because he is an anti-hero. You have to remember, he is a hero to the left. He's like Robin Hood. He's like Joker. So Joker, classic anti-hero, victim of society, kill the rich. He starts a movement. They wear a mask. So this guy kills a rich person, starts a movement, and people are dressing like Luigi. They are having Luigi lookalike contests. Isabel Ann says, Dave Chappelle debut film was Robin Hood Men in Tights by Mel Brooks. Interesting. Okay, so I wouldn't have made that association, but that has to be factored in here. Joined by Observing Reality, Clockwork 113, Shannon Jones, and Tunex. Yes, Christmas Eve. Okay, here we go. Got a video of a drunken rant by migrant accused of setting woman on fire. The suspect, 33-year-old Sebastian Zapata. Now, weirdly enough, if you search his name, and Synchromorpheus pointed this out, and this may not be him, in all likelihood it's not, but if you happen to search his name, this court case comes up. And it's a court case involving somebody suing, like a barbecue. Here it is. Zapata versus Izzy's Barbecue. So some individual is suing a barbecue incorporated. It's just kind of weird. It's probably not him, but it's just kind of strange that you search his name and it brings up some guy suing a barbecue restaurant. Sort of like the other guy at Maxwell's Rello set himself on fire next to a hot dog stand. Okay, anyway, he's 33. Doesn't mean anything, but again, we're just noticing patterns. So here's the Area 51 caller story. You may have heard about this. September 11th, 1997, an employee of Area 51 calls into Coast to Coast and tells Art Bell the truth about aliens and UFOs. They're reptilians. They're coming to kill us. They're already here. He has this major panic attack. Well, they played this panic attack on 101.7 Tuscaloosa, and a lot of people are frightened by it. Even though it's a 30-year-old broadcast,
there's something strange going on in Alabama. Listen to this recording at 101.7 radio station. It was live all night. You could go on the website and listen to this. Now, if this isn't some leave the world behind shit, I don't know what is. Check it out.
The heck is this?
Okay, this is just bizarre. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but the people scare themselves. There was no drones. Think about that. Nobody remembers, but people forget so fast. But last week, there was a drone panic that swept the nation. Nobody remembers. Before that, it was Luigi. Now it's Luigi again. There's like this really short attention span, but there were no drones. It was totally fake. And now this story, this 101.7 hacked. Drones mentioned, Russia, aliens, War of the Worlds style. Feds patches in, they hear someone ranting about interdimensional beings looking to wipe out populations. Later they find out it's an old coast-to-coast call from 20 years ago. It's like you could almost play War of the Worlds, Orson Welles, and people would panic, even though you're playing the old recording. I appreciate that very much. Observing Reality. 10 for the raft, 10 for the ship. Conscious Reality says, I missed the last few lives. Have you discussed the Wisconsin private school shooting? We did talk about it. The shooter wearing the KMFDM shirt, which is a tie-in to the Littleton, Colorado shooting. We discussed it a bit, but there's always more. The teacher was 42. Okay. Yesterday we were talking about the truck attack and the reasons why that is likely hoaxed. Probably fake, although I still lean towards it's possibly real because the body count was so low. But the drones were certainly fake, and it makes the point for us that we try to make every day. that the public is reality impaired, and that if you're not a skeptic, you're going to be submerged in the sea of irrelevance where you won't know real from fake. If you assume the basic reality of every story they present, then you're in the fog of Psy-War. I know people who thought that there were aliens invading. I knew others who figured it was just drones from China. But none of them had at a starting point there were no drones. But when the various sightings were cross-referenced with flight trackers, what did they find? All drones. I'm sorry, all planes. All drone sightings, planes. Well, actually, no, there's a Venus and Jupiter. So Venus was reported to be an orb by ABC News. And then Russell Brand saw the video of Venus presented as an orb by ABC News, and he was convinced it was some kind of angel from God. You had people talking to Venus, thinking it was an orb, and talking to the orb about Jesus, talking to Venus about Jesus. Like, these are normies. These aren't flat earthers. These aren't conspiracy theorists. These are just normal, everyday people. And I mentioned that there's a lot of anger at clouds. So this is Jessica Lynn, and she is heated about this. She is mad. She says, these MFers, right above my damn house, I'm so sick of this S. They're spraying and then they're shooting frequencies into the ionosphere. God protect us from this evil. Readers added a context. These are, quote, clouds. Yeah, these are clouds. So it's not even a chemtrail. It's just a cloud. And people are treating these clouds like it's some kind of a chemical warfare attack. And I've been facetiously responding to people. I've been saying, hey, we just need to bring out the air defense artillery from the National Guard and start shooting them down. I say that I've been suggesting that chemtrails have killed off all the bees in New Mexico. There's entire villages of dead people, carrion birds picking at the corpses, and nobody's alive to report it. And they're just agreeing with me. They're like, yeah, it's true. Chemtrails are the number one threat to your immediate survival. And yet they won't put on a mask. All right, here's a still shot from the fire. And again, the person on fire didn't scream, didn't move. It wasn't censored. And there were people walking by like it was nothing. So I thought it could be AVR. I mean, I'm still thinking it's a staged event. And people are mad at the illegal immigrant. But how do we know the person that was set on fire wasn't a CEO? I mean, think about it. What if that person had been a corrupt CEO who had screwed over a lot of people? Well, then we're looking at a hero here. So we shouldn't be so quick to judge the murderers because these might be justifiable murders. To the left, anyway. Like with that attack at the Christmas parade where they ran over a bunch of people. We don't know how many of those supposed victims were CEOs. Isn't it open season on CEOs? Like, you have the moral high ground? Like, what if that person they burned was the CEO of some company that was even worse than this United Healthcare guy? Yeah, Elon said enough is enough. I saw that. Whenever they quote the Illuminati playing cards, you know something's up. So this was posted today. I'm not insinuating anything specifically, but I'm just talking about fakeability. When we say something's not fake, just because we don't know how it's faked, that's kind of fallacious. Imagine you're at a magic show, and you are able to figure out how he did 9 out of 10 tricks, but you can't figure out how he pulled a quarter out of that assistant's ear. Are you going to assume that was magic because you can't figure out the trick? No. You're going to say it's a trick. I don't know how he did it, but it's a magic show. You don't assume the tricks you can't debunk are literal magic. So when it comes to special effects in the news and the question of fakeability, you can't assume it's essential reality just because you don't know how to immediately debunk it. Like, people will say, well, if you can't prove they're using bungee cords to dangle astronauts on the ISS, then they're really in space. I'm like, no, I don't know how they're faking it. And then I come across the behind the scenes for the Inception, the movie Inception, where they use counterweights and a seesaw to simulate 0G, no wires. So that's the most likely explanation. But I only arrived at that recently, but I knew they were faking for years. So in this case, could you fake an Antarctic base and a 24-hour sun? Well, here is an LED volume stage, and this creates virtual sets, 75 feet wide, 18 feet tall, It can be modified indefinitely. Lucasfilms has one. The Paris Olympic Games has access to one. So this is far beyond green screen. It's like rear screen projection, but it's a totally immersive environment where you're surrounded on all sides by the environment. You could fake a moon landing there. You could fake Mars. You could fake anything. So the question of fakeability is something you could, bring up. Could they have faked it? It's a fair question. But Jaron is pretty mad that people were even questioning it. But you build up a community, 100, 200,000 people on his channel, a community of skeptics. You can't get mad at them for remaining skeptical. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I did want to point this out. He says, "I'm home. I'm happy to be so. For those who contributed to his GoPro purchase and who donated will get physical USBs." But going down, he says, "Those of you who have accused him of faking the GoPro footage," he said, "do not ask me onto your channel for an interview. Do not expect me to respond. You are dead to me. I will not acknowledge your garbage. If I promoted you and we've been friends for even 10 years, I have more things to say, but it won't be pretty." And anyway, there's a pretty long rant attached to this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But if you questioned the integrity of the final experiment, you are dead to Jaron. And I volunteered to go. If you don't believe him, if you don't believe that trip was legit, I volunteer to go or send somebody from here. And I fully expect people to question whether it's real or not. And I would do my best to avoid that kind of, I guess, just any kind of ambiguity. And I don't even know that it was ambiguous. Like, we still need to see his footage in its entirety. So fake until proven real, but you have to wait for the evidence, and sometimes you have to suspend judgment. So I've been saying too, I've suspended judgment. But what does the 24-hour sun mean? That's another question. It kills the flat Earth, pizza disc under a dome, single sun, AE map, rotation map. It kills that. But that's their fault for constructing a model without getting more facts first. Blap, blap. Appreciate that. For the holidays. Another super chat. Salty says it'll be behind a paywall. Well, the reason why I don't trust Jaron, and I'm sure I'm dead to him, which is, it's fine. The reason I don't trust him in general is that he faked ISS transits, which basically means he's a NASA pawn, if not a NASA employee, LARPing as a flat earther. I'm entitled to my opinions. And I'm not going to be cowed by somebody's anger into not questioning them. Like, I don't even know how you could be emotional at this point. They all are. Like McToon. See, if you're doing science, if you're on a scientific expedition, you shouldn't be emotional. You should be dispassionate. You shouldn't have a vested interest in the outcome. And yet, McToon had bets on the shape of the Earth. So he had a financial incentive to proving himself right. And I'm not saying McToon was doing it for the money, but if this was a climate scientist and you found out that they were getting money on the side by producing certain results, you would say, okay, well, that's not exactly scientific. Blap says question everything. Well, that's another thing too. If somebody asks a question, you just answer it. I question the media. If they can't provide the information to validate their story, I'm under no obligation to believe, and it's their job to provide the burden of proof. So the best I can say is, okay, well, I'm very informed about this story that I don't believe is real. I don't believe is true. I'm an informed disbeliever. And the informed disbeliever is in a better position than the low information believer. Truth Hurts says Jaron is told he has an explosive device in his neck. Well, in the play Newsbenders, the 1968 play Newsbenders, this character, the journalist, is moving up in the media, and he comes across this agent from One World News Service who tells him that we write the news 5 years in advance. So they're faking events on the world stage. But the people who are in on it have implants. And if they talk about it, they die. So that's how it works. So maybe Jaron and Witsit have explosive implants. And they can't talk. Okay, let's continue here. I'll open up phones here in just a minute. And I apologize for the clipping on the sound. I hope I've fixed it. I might have to reboot my system here. Angle of elevation says it only kills the idea of people who thought the AE map was a model of the sky and the sun you see. Well, from the very beginning, I said we don't have enough new information to build a new model. The best we can do is reject their model because they are a bunch of liars who use special effects, cartoons, and psyops to convince us of things. If it weren't for the fact that NASA lies and that the mainstream media is a liar, we would be able to trust them. And even if they can construct a believable model that answers all the questions and serves as a map and matches what you observe from your limited perspective, it says nothing about outer space because space travel has been falsified. Unless you know something I don't. As far as I'm concerned, space travel is not, at best it's allegory for higher states of consciousness, but it's not a literal thing. Like, I don't believe in space travel. And even if the Earth is a ball as per the final experiment, I don't think that even means that, oh, therefore we believe in low Earth orbit. Like, I would like to know, does Jaron believe in low Earth orbit? And I'm really glad for the drone hysteria, because the drone hysteria explains how people arrive at wrong answers quite easily, and how these things are reinforced in an echo chamber. And I feel like the way that people have come to believe in the International Space Station is very much analogous to the fake drone sightings. And there are ways to deal with this. And I came up with something too. I suggested to Mick West that if you want to debunk chemtrails for all time, all you have to do is debunk those the same way you confronted the drone sightings. You get the date, time, and location for every photograph. So somebody photographs an alleged chemtrail and they post it on Twitter. You should be able to ask them, I need the date, time, location, or date, time, location, direction you're facing, and I need the metadata from your photo. Then you take that and you cross-reference it with the flight paths of the day, and you can determine which plane left that trail. Now, this will tell you a few things. It'll tell you its altitude. It'll tell you the humidity, what temperature, the pressure. There's so many things it will tell you. And so eventually, we will be able to cross-reference all of our findings regarding these reported sightings and determine what's more likely. Does the contrail explanation suffice? Or is there something else? But I don't see any rigor. And if you don't see rigor to observations, it's most likely a hysteria, a panic, or a rumor. So there's no sense of organization to these sightings. It's just they're tweeting it like crazy. It reminds me of the Russia-Ukraine conflict when thousands of the most popular videos purported to be war footage were actually clips from video games. And nobody cared. It didn't make a difference. Truth Hurt says, just imagine what the TV will have people believing in 10 years. Well, in 10 years, we probably will have been through a fallout lockdown. And I think that's coming next. And if you haven't seen it, there's this movie called The Humanity Bureau with Nicolas Cage. And he's part of this group that go around basically sending people to this extermination camp. But it's this post-nuke apocalypse world where people are locked down because of the radiation. And they can't go around spreading this contamination. But they're banned from having Geiger counters. So no one can check for themselves if it's still out there. Well, it turns out, and this is what Nick Cage's character finds out, is that there is no fallout. There is no radiation. People are locked down for no reason. Now, this was a movie from 2019. That could never happen in real life, obviously. Maybe it was 2017. But it was a fake lockdown premise. That was the whole idea behind the movie. But that's going to happen soon. I have this guess, and I explained it yesterday, that I think 2025 is the year that we're going to get Oppenheimered, and we're going to experience the whole fallout lockdown, which I'm slightly looking forward to, I'll be honest. And I mentioned this, but this bears repeating, because even if you're not a paid subscriber to Infinite Plane Radio, if you're just a casual listener, you do benefit from the free mind war inoculation, because what you believe matters. Psychosomatics are real, these psychosomatic effects, and right now across New Jersey, people are suffering headaches, dizziness, nausea. They're getting mysteriously ill, and they're saying it's because of the drones. So their belief in a drone attack or a drone infiltration invasion, coupled with Joe Rogan's claim that drones are hunting for a missing nuke, reading its radiation signature, that has people thinking that they're getting radiation sickness from the drones. So the drones don't exist. The missing nuke is just conjecture, but people are really getting sick from it. And this is why I'm trying to say, those people who are mad at clouds, you could conceivably catch chemtrail lung, even though there are no such thing as chemtrails. You can make yourself sick with worry. Engel says, people claim the drones are a black op military operation. So if we have this anti-awesome anti-gravity tech, that leaves the question of why SpaceX is wasting time with controlled. Sure. I would say that there were no drones, though. That's the crux of it here, is that anybody with an opinion about the drones has taken the MSM plus perspective, meaning the mainstream media reports one thing, and then they add on to it. And this is what truthers are all about, adding on to the story because the story didn't satisfy them as it was presented. I take the MSM minus position. I subtract the things I can't verify. So from the very beginning, I said, I don't believe there are any drones. I haven't seen anything convincing. Just people posting it for clickbait. It's money. There are anonymous chemtrail accounts where people pay a lot of money to get a lot of subs, to get a lot of credibility, and all they do is they post pictures of cirrus clouds. And this has a big enough following that you could actually earn money by posting chemtrail propaganda. So you may not even believe in them. You don't have to. There's enough people who do believe in it that you can make money off them. So they're being milked for money. They're being tapped into because they're so predictable. They will all click. They will all engage. Salty says vax drones. Well, now they're saying that the drone, the vax is in the tomatoes and the lettuce. What won't people? Someone said won't. Someone had mentioned in here. What are people going to believe in 10 years? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, we live in a simulation. It's bad. We do. We've already been moved collectively into a simulation. That's what the world stage is. Our internal model, our map of the world, is under the creative control of the power elite, and they fill it with all sorts of hyperstitions, and they can just mess with our minds. I've seen a number of these rumor psyops where they don't even need evidence. The evidence will emerge out of the group of people in X who just want to make some money. They'll just manufacture it. So, for example, Haitians eating cats, no evidence. Motorcycle gangs from California, the Hells Angels, go into Colorado to fight Venezuelan gangs who are taking over apartments. Never happened. But yet these things spread, just like the drone thing. Engel says, I saw a map of world sightings of the drones in every country now, but mostly the U.S. Yeah, that's kind of disappointing. They could have an alien invasion, and they don't even have to try hard. And that's because people want to believe. So there's a few factors here. Why did the drone invasion go viral? Well, you have grifters who make money off clickbait. That's big. I mean, I don't begrudge them. If you can get your car payment completely covered by lying on Twitter to gullible people, then fine. Whatever. It's just money, I guess. That is what trutherism is about these days. It's all driven by financial incentive. Then you have deliberate use of this by politicians like Trump so they can cast aspersions on the other side and build up this narrative that World War III is imminent. So everyone's taking advantage of the public panic. They never let a panic go to waste. And then you have those who want to believe, who are predisposed because they think that the aliens are benefactors. They're going to come down and pay all your bills and get rid of the bad guys. But it's something that a lot of people want to believe. And now it's also scientific to believe it. Science endorses it. The modern paradigm endorses it. But what's the point of it? Why right now? Some have suggested that the reason for this drone panic and the reason for the Antarctica expedition is they want everybody on the same sheet so they can fake an invasion. And they want to shut the flat earthers up because if you don't believe in outer space, you're not going to believe in space aliens. So they want to put conspiracy theories back under the control, under the dominance of people who believe in the spinning ball model. The flat earthers have kind of hijacked the conspiracy conversation for too long. Truth Hurt says 10 years ago it was so different, hard to fathom 10 years from now. Things are progressing at an accelerated pace. Well, I think what's happening is truth is irrelevant. You have many different belief systems that can all coexist, even though it's incoherent. It's the brave new world, and it is that bad. There is no objective reality. In fact, they destroyed the objective reality decades ago. When we all accepted that the atom bomb was real, we were put into an alternate reality game at that point. The moon landing cemented it. We're no longer in collective lunacy. We entered an alternate reality game. I often cite the quote from War Games. It says, "Strange game, the only winning move is not to play." So an alternate reality game is essentially, you would consider what we're experiencing, where we all treat certain things as real, even though we're just making believe. But the public doesn't know that it's involved in make-believe and self-deception. Truman says space travel is fake AF. Sure, I mean, my contention here is that outer space has always just been a new iteration of an older concept, that is heaven. So you have all these different religions that all compete, and they all have their own version of heaven, but space is the one that they all believe in. The Pope believes in aliens. So space is a great unifier, and it's a replacement for the archaic heavens. And the whole alien thing, by the way, is really just a replacement for angels. Atheists don't believe in angels, but they believe in aliens. You see how that works? They need you to be a believer. They need you to accept certain ideas. Like, for example, saviors from above. It's all programming. We will know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. William Casey, CIA Director. Mission accomplished. So I already went over this article, which is called "How Can We Confidently Call Things Fake?" And I think it's just really important to understand the distinction between low information claims and highly informed claims. Whether it's calling something real or fake, it's really about how much information that you have. And the habitual way of consuming news is to be a low information believer. It doesn't take a lot to convince them. I'm going to play this clip again because it bears repeating. If you work alone, wear a mask.
You missed the spot.
If you're working alone, wear a mask.
I brought this up the other night. This is from Dark Knight Rises, and Jonathan Nolan, Christopher Nolan, we always bring up their movies and how these movies foreshadow the future. And this one in particular has this interesting phrase about putting on a mask when you're alone to protect the people you love. So he's like, I don't need a mask. He's like, it's not for you. It's to protect those you care about.
I'm not afraid to be seen standing up to these guys.
The mask's not for you. It's to protect the people you care about.
So then he hands him what looks to be a spiked ball, looks like a COVID, and he says, count down from 5 and throw.
Count to 5, then throw.
And it blows up in a nice mushroom cloud, which in itself foreshadows Christopher Nolan's future movie, Oppenheimer. And Jonathan and Christopher Nolan have a brother who was a hitman with the codename Oppenheimer. Kind of interesting. But I took this to mean this. I took this to mean the mask comment represents 2020, as does the spike ball. Count to 5 and then this. So here we are hitting 2025. So I think 2025 is the year that we get Oppenheimered. And then after that, what happens? Well, Fallout. Jonathan Nolan, Fallout. Fallout's what happens after. These brothers are in the PSYOP entertainment complex. Yeah, if you're not auto-hoaxing, you're not paying attention, you are behind the curve. If you're not aware of the metascript, news bending, and the real purpose behind fake news, you're still lost in Trutherville. You took a wrong turn on Q Street. You didn't quite get out of Alex Jones Town. But that's why we're here. We're here to break guardrails that keep people stuck in these bad paradigms, these subsets of the mainstream. You have to step out of it. You have to go the negative route. And one other point that I was thinking of today, because I'm consistently debating simulation theorists. And it's a debate because the fake news propaganda matrix is so complex as far as there are so many examples of nuanced programming in advance that references future news. It's so well integrated that it looks like synchronicity. It looks, if you assume with your starting point that this is all randomly connecting, your only explanation is some kind of divine agency is connecting everything. We live in a simulation. And I've been saying for some time that the simulation explanation is problematic for a couple of reasons. Namely, the simulation explanation removes human agency. And why does this matter? And I think I came up with an answer for this. Metascript breakdown reveals fraud, deception, and the manipulation of the public through perception management stunts and psyops. Why would we investigate a crime? Why would you investigate fraud and ignore the perpetrators and instead say the simulation did it? You would not. And in this case, we're talking about covert propaganda inserted into all the video games, all the books, all the comics, total mind control going back multiple generations. These agendas that are used to guide our entire society through this prefabricated historical narrative, we're calling out the fact of it. We're calling out the existence of really the only true conspiracy we can verify. And it's not a stretch. If you understand the space program's fake, well, then how much more difficult is it for them to fake the stuff on the ground? And if you introduce a big psyop, let's say a 9/11 or atom bombs or lockdowns, you're actually introducing years of news stories that will follow that presumably you would have scripted. So the idea that we live in a scripted reality is not far-fetched. It's like 30% fake, at least. Our history is therefore 30% fake. Our collective backdrop frame of reference is tainted with fakery. It's systemic. So we've made the case that there is systemic fakery, and the PSYOP entertainment complex is used to rule this place and synchronize us within a singular worldview. Having this information means that we can confidently state the purpose of it, and we can rule out the idea that some higher power is doing this. And we can stop exonerating or giving a pass to the perps. And when I say the perpetrators, I mean we're talking about humans involved in a mass mind control propaganda matrix that spans the entire, quote, globe. It encompasses all news, all entertainment, and it obviously pervades all of our indoctrination. So now that we're looking at it clearly and we can see what it is, we no longer need to obfuscate it with questions about who's behind it. Like, I think we know. At least we know it's human beings who are also involved in the fake news, because it would have to be part of a continuum. You couldn't really separate the fake news from the preceding propaganda, which is often called predictive. But I think the term concurrent makes more sense, because oftentimes we are seeing the relationship between the entertainment news and what follows to be more real time. Like as in happening at the same time, not months in advance, not years in advance. And one thing too, and we do this frequently, is we're able to predict what movies will contain messaging that will pertain to upcoming fake news events. And I made this very clear with The Madness and Rebel Ridge. I said, look, I'm going to watch this new Netflix. It's number one. The next day, after watching Rebel Ridge, it happens to Tyvik Hill. He gets pulled out of the car on the way to the game by the racist cops. I watched The Madness. It's got some anti-hero killing a CEO. There's a 3D printed gun. The CEO is obviously based on Musk. And then we see the CEO shooting. And it has this narrative of class warfare, the people versus the power elite, and the CEO being assassinated is viewed as a good thing. So these aren't anything more than deliberately inserted, coordinated, and synchronized propaganda messages. Okay, let's move on here. Small news story. Ukraine kamikaze bombed a Russian skyscraper with a drone. So you have a pretty dramatic. But for some reason, the building didn't melt and fall into its own footprint. No, I did have a theory about that. People say, well, what temperature does jet fuel burn? Could it have melted the towers? Well, you're assuming it's jet fuel. The chemtrail fuel, the chemtrail juice or oil, whatever it is, that might actually have a higher burning temperature and could possibly burn down buildings. Truman B3000 says, did anyone else see Nathan Thompson recently chasing after kids on teachers on playgrounds, harassing them, saying they're lying to kids, making flirts look rude and unhinged on purpose? I met Nathan Thompson at a Flat Earth conference, and the first thing he said to me was, have you read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? I was like, that's a hoax, but yeah. So he immediately just came out with his heavy anti-Jew Hitler thing. There's plenty of videos of Nathan Thompson behaving strangely, like flexing his abs in the shower, bragging about 8 shower heads, and he's babysitting or he's house sitting some home that's owned by the person taking care of George W. Bush. I mean, all kinds of weirdness there. There's a video of him kicking down a door because his girlfriend and her baby are hiding from him. And then there's the video of him chasing children on the playground, screaming about chemtrails and 5G towers, I think. But that didn't just happen. That happened in like 2020. It was about the same time that Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole was going to retirement homes, hypnotizing 105-year-old women to convince them that they were taught about the flat earth in school. Unconscionable. I mean, there's nothing too low. But no, I don't think these individuals are still around. That was done years ago. But I do agree with you that these individuals are planted there to make people look bad. Like, it's not a coincidence that the founder of the Biblical Flat Earth Society is in prison. You don't want to know why. And there are many people who are prominent in the Flat Earth Conference who are all just, it was like you look at the conference speakers and it's a lineup, and it may as well have been like a police lineup, because it's like, oh, sex offender, groper, and just manufacturer of content, just disgusting people. And I'm like, how do these people get in front of this movement? And I thought, well, I guess if you're going to build a movement to take it down, you would make sure that its leadership could be rug pulled at any time. These are compromised individuals. The individual who gave a soundbite to Daily Beast who said, I was watching Alex Jones on YouTube, and the algorithm turned me into a flat earther. That was the basis for YouTube destroying their search filter to remove the searches for flat earth. And that particular individual who gave them that soundbite was on parole for doing one of the most vile things you could imagine. And I thought, why would someone like that be a representative of this entire idea? And at the time, it just seemed to me that, yeah, we're looking at controlled opposition, just looking at it right in the face. But anyway, you can't make the argument that flat earthers are uniquely crazy or unhinged. All the serial killers, all the bank robbers, all the people flipping out on airplanes, all the people fighting in Walmarts, those are all gloobers. The globe is just full of, humanity, and all its grotesqueries are predominantly the people who go with the mainstream. You can't just say the fringe people are uniquely bad. We haven't had any flat earth serial killers. Although I'm open to the possibility that Thomas Crook, the guy who shot Trump's ear, I'm open to the possibility he was a flat earther. And the reason he missed is he did not account for the Coriolis effect. Believing that the earth was stationary and flat, he saw no need to account for the rotation of the earth. So he aimed properly, pulled the trigger, and the earth turned. And the bullet, instead of hitting Trump's head, merely grazed his ear. Immortal AI says, so much drone hysteria so abruptly, it seems there's a synthesis in mind for these drones' antithesis. Right. They push that out there for a reason. I don't think it's over yet. If anything, it's a test. It's a gullibility test. Like, hey, is the public still just eminently gullible, and will they fall for anything? And the answer is yes. They'll believe in immigrants eating cats with no evidence, motorcycle gangs fighting Venezuelan gangs to preserve the jobs of American gangs. Nothing's too ludicrous. These are the same people who believe that JFK Jr. is coming back to save them. And there's no bottom to the insanity. Yeah, gloobers. I call them gloobers because goober, globe. They say flurf, which is really hard to say. Now, this is not a flat Earth video. This is Russian cosmonaut Sergei Kudverchov on Tuesday published footage of the moon setting as viewed from the ISS. The video shows how the moon will gradually flatten and then completely vanish in the dark. So I didn't know this. I didn't know that from the ISS, that if you're 185 miles above the surface of the Earth, I didn't know that the moon sets by turning flat. Now, this is coming from the ISS, so this isn't mine. This is the ISS footage. Take a look. This is presented by a cosmonaut. Really strange. I remember when this first came out a couple years ago, I thought, what are we looking at? Is this a movie screen? They're in the ISS supposedly, and I don't know. Nothing about it looks real, but this is really exceptionally bad even for Roscosmos. Does anybody have an explanation for this? Any glurfs in the house? Any gloobers? Explain to me why the moon is flat. Like, I may not be a flat earther, but I'm a flat mooner. This is evidence that the moon is flat. Yes, Pippi, thank you. That's how you pronounce it. Searchy cut search off. Yeah, research flat moon. Research wooden moon. Because the moon rocks that were handed to the government of Holland by the 3 astronauts were all later determined to be petrified wood. Salty Siren says floon. Peter W. says cheap CGI. I guess would be flooners. So your flurfs, glurfs, and flooners, if you're a flat mooner. Are the cosmonauts flooners? Because here he says that the moon is flat. So I think he's just walking through the ISS studio, and he's just like recording the movie screen, and he's going around it. And if he kept going, you'd see backstage. We got the stagehands and coffee, just the whole behind the fourth wall. But again, this is ridiculous. And this isn't mine. This is right out of the space station. I'm going to play it one more time and just see it in the background. Unbelievable. So yeah, I guess I'm a flat mooner. But my evidence comes from the Russians. Would they pay me for this? Weren't the Russians paying like Tim Pool $100,000 a week? Oh, by the way, so the person who burned in the subway, if it was fake, in all likelihood, it was fake, in my opinion, I guess. But I hope it was fake. I hope this person didn't burn. However, I want to point out a couple of things. One, ever since January 6th, in fact, before January 6th, because of what was happening, I said, we need to quarantine 33-year-olds. Because 33-year-olds are overly represented in drama, disturbing things on the world stage. I mean, I have a long list of 33-year-olds who are involved in various psyops. It's almost predictable. So this guy who set the person on fire was 33. We could have prevented that had someone listened to me. The QAnon shaman was 33. Think about it. If they had quarantined that guy, they wouldn't have stormed the Capitol because he was like the leader. Martin Luther was 33 when he nailed the 95 Theses to the door. Dave Koresh was 33 when he was incinerated. Timothy McVeigh was 33. You can go down the list, and it's just ridiculous. But to my point here, there's a stuff called Zell gel. And when stuntmen use this, it's called fire retardant gel, stunt gel, Zell gel, or naked burn gel. So when someone is using the naked burn gel, they don't scream because they have to hold their breath. But it is possible they use this special effect in things like Game of Thrones because it's better than CGI. So they use this quite frequently. And if you remember, when Maxwell Ezrello set himself on fire outside the courthouse on 4/19/2024, he was also quiet. In the comments here, Patricia Steer said, we don't know, he could be legitimately 33. And that is a good point. But my answer to that was, it's commonly associated with high-profile, questionable events. I think it's some kind of a hoax indicator, perhaps for internal communication purposes. And I also pointed out that the Burning Man and the number 33 are chronically associated. This happens in at least 33% of the various psyops. And I have numerous examples. So the Burning Man, for example. Burning Man 2019 was the 33rd Burning Man. They had 33 consecutive ones. Black Rock City, Nevada. And at that last one, because 2020, COVID canceled it, a 33-year-old man, listen to this, 33-year-old man died at Burning Rock at the 33rd. And as we looked at this, we found, wait a minute here, this is really interesting because in 1986, when they had the first Burning Man, some 33-year-old set himself on fire outside of the Reagan White House. 33 years later, 2019, the same time that this man was found, a 33-year-old set himself on fire at the Ellipse in front of the White House. So it happened again. So the Burning Man 33 thing, what's the connection? Well, it goes deeper, I think, into the symbolism. It ties into this idea of Christ, the phoenix, death, resurrection. It's all interrelated. Kundalini, fire snake. It's all about ascension. But let me look at this. Show you this one. So 2019, the man who set himself on fire in front of the White House was wearing a USA shirt. So it's Burning USA, and this is before the summer of 2020. Man dies after setting himself on fire near the White House. This was May 29th, 2019. 33-year-old Arnav Gupta died from his injuries. Man sets himself on fire, engulfed in flames, and here he is. TMZ was there to film it. USA on his shirt. And there's even more to it. This is a pretty in-depth event. And at the time I was investigating this, because I was looking in the background, you could see the Washington Monument. And I came across this thing, which they do every single year. Right there at the mall, they call it they call it, I think they call it, let me pull this up on the screen. They do a Burning Man in front of the White House National Monument. They actually burn an effigy every year. Let's see if I can find it. But they're obsessed with this stuff. What is the deal with this Burning Man, this immolation? Bohemian Grove, cremation of care. Well, what is that? They're burning somebody. Okay, it's called Catharsis on the Mall. Catharsis on the Mall. Unlike Burning Man, this is focused on one. So this is compared to Burning Man. There's some articles here about it. So it's called Catharsis on the Mall. The symbol of it is a flame. You see the obelisk there. They do this around May, the same time that this other guy set himself on fire in full view of the thing. So here is a statue. I think it's 42 feet tall. I'm not sure, but there's a statue of I think it might be Isis, overlooking the Burning Man in front of the obelisk. And of course, the obelisk symbol ties into this when you get into the symbol of the earth god, the one who dies and is resurrected. Well, at the time of his death, this dismembered deity in all the various stories is commemorated by that particular symbol. I'll do a more in-depth discussion of this and the rituals around it. They did this really interesting one in 2020? Or 2021, where they projected the Saturn V rocket launch onto the obelisk. And one of my contentions here is that the space program is a syncretic iteration of Mystery Babylon, and that it's all basically about this worship of this sun god, this solar phallic cult, that the obelisk is now a rocket, and it serves the same purpose. It's all about pageantry. It's not about taking you to Mars. Angle says some woman was set on fire in New York. She was probably 33. Well, the guy who set her on fire was. We don't know her age yet. Joined by Mason Free, which you're not. You never will be. Osher gifted 5 memberships, so blue wrenches are being passed out. And there is a video that I uploaded today for members. It hasn't processed yet. It's an introduction to my new podcast, which I'm going to be recording. I'm recording what's likely going to be 21 possible. That's my plan. I'm going to pre-record an entire series on a very specific subject, which will encompass a lot of this. Iconography, symbolism. But that's going to be produced over the next week, and I will put an advertisement up for it on my channel. So, new blue wrenches go to Chris's wife, Barack Hailstein. They Lie We See, Vanden Banden. Lord, is that Chris's wife? And Diana Southard. And by the way, if you need a blue wrench, just comment below the video in the chat and I'll hand it out to you. Just comment below, and when I go into the comments later, I'll hand them out. I handed out like 10 wrenches today. So we'll talk about their weird fixation, the cult that runs the world, which may as well be wizards and warlocks. I mean, they're certainly into this stuff at a very deep level. And we would be remiss if we glossed over it and didn't pay attention to it or minimized it. There was this tendency for years for people to minimize the significance of fakery. And I'm like, no, it's fake is the rule, not the exception. Media is not there to inform you, it's there to conform you. And that's because ultimately, through both omission and deliberate injection of lies, it's about worldview maintenance and formation. It's the opposite of informing you. The general public is misinformed. That's the default position. Okay, I think we've covered enough ground. I have to go run some errands, but we're going to start earlier tomorrow. And I think there's enough interest for me to do this IPS morning deprogram where I set the stage for what we're going to talk about later. So I kind of want to get back to that. So today we talked about the subway fire, real or fake. I think it's fake. Jared responds to critics. You're not allowed to criticize him. Luigi, Deadpool, Joker, Oswald connections. Matching outfits with the attorney. And so when he's dressed like Oswald and these photos look the same, it's an illusion. It's a literary technique. They're associating him. Anger at clouds. I recommend disabusing yourselves of useless paranoias, and that would include being afraid of clouds. It's bad for your mental health and physical health. America's new space laser weapon just shocked the world. Space lasers. We'll get into that later. Yesterday we talked about this a bit. a big piece of a Chinese commercial imaging satellite broke up and it was viewed all across the Southwest. The movie Homestead is out. In it, Los Angeles gets nuked. So there's a lot of hype for a nuke, and I think now is the time. I knew it would have to happen after the Oppenheimer movie came out. And then finally there's this. I think we can get to this, and then I have to leave. But The Economist often contains predictive programming messaging. And their latest issue, which came out December 21st, has a holiday gathering, very eclectic. But notice what you see here in the middle. People falling on the floor. So this, to me, looks like it could be alluding to the Christmas attack where people were knocked over by the Saudi driver, the activist who was the subject of a BBC documentary. Just another actor. But probably not a coincidence. We talked about Nick Fuentes' attempted assassination, although it might have been fake, because it perfectly paints him up as a victim, which he needed to be done so he could win his case against the 58-year-old that he shoved down the stairs, because he had to prove that he felt threatened. But could it have been faked? Could it be a psyop? Well, assuming he's a Fed, yeah, it's a guarantee. And then this. This is 1999. The astronauts in space. Look at their Christmas helmets, their Christmas hats. Their Santa hats are all dangling down, so they're not sticking straight up. But what happened here? 2023. All their hats are sticking straight up. So what accounts for this discrepancy? Anybody know? It's a continuity error. At a minimum, it's a continuity error. Somebody should be getting fired for this stuff. Anyway, I feel like Mystery Science Theater 3000, like all we can do is criticize the bad movies. That's all we can do. Other than that, we're kind of forced to watch the same stuff as everybody else. And if you've seen that series, Mystery Science Theater, the purpose of the bad sci-fi is to drive people crazy. And they are able to not go crazy by laughing at it, by mocking it. And I think we're in a similar position, that we have maintained our sanity by critically examining their terrible science fiction movies. Meanwhile, the people who believe it literally, the mainstream media fundamentalists, the Gloobers, they have objectively gone mad. All right, this is Auto Hoax or GTFO. We'll see you all tomorrow.